Okay, this last piece is going to look at the final component of the MBTI, which is J and P, judging or perceiving. This is all about how we look at the world around us, not how we interact with the world around us, not how we make decisions, but just how we even perceive that world. So those who prefer judging really look at the world around them and they see a series of decisions. They see a bunch of closed doors that need to be opened, and then decisions that need to be made around that closed door. And people who prefer perceiving are seeing options and opportunities for exploration. And there's like, it's not that they must look behind every door to make the decision. It's that they could pick any door. They could pick no door. They have all these options about what they want to explore or not, and the flexibility to do so. And so oftentimes when we hear about the judging type and what makes that person who they are, we think type A, we think control. And when we hear about the perceiving type, and this is of course always in opposition and perception, perceiving type to the judging type can feel really chaotic, but to the perceiving type, the judging type can seem really controlled, and even being too much in control or wanting to be in control. And so when we see how this looks in, sort of stereotypical ways, that the perceiving type is okay with things, being what they are, and may not have a strong opinion, or may not want to make a decision, or may not want to make a plan. And the judging type really wants that plan to be in place. They want that opinion to be expressed. And there can be pressure on the judging person to always be the one who's making those decisions. So like, well, what are we going to have for dinner tonight? If the judging person is always making the decision because the perceiving type doesn't care, that can actually start to cause some conflict. Another way that this shows up is in planfulness and scheduling. So if you have a planner or a calendar or an app that tracks all of the things you have to do, and if you use it and you like to use it, chances are you are a J type. If you have a calendar or an app or a planner or something to that effect and you don't use it, and like the planner's been sitting on your shelf for 3 years and it's covered in dust, and you wrote 2 things in it and you never looked at it again, and looking at it makes you feel stressed out, chances are you're a perceiver. So you want to, as a perceiver, just take life as it comes and not make any decisions. And as a judger, you want to plan and schedule so that you can have closure on the things that are currently feeling open-ended. And the thing about closure is that this is true of how we approach the world around us. It's also true of how we approach communication and conflict. And so the last area that this shows up is in conflict, where the judging type really wants to settle the conflict. They don't feel okay having it stay open-ended. And the perceiving type is okay with that. And what's really interesting about this is if we combine it with other components of type. Let's say we have an extroverted, feeling, judging type and an introverted, thinking, perceiving type. So the extroverted, feeling, judging type is, as a feeling type, they're really feeling a lot of emotion around the conflict. They are having, like how they even think about the conflict is rooted in emotion. It's rooted in personal feelings. It's rooted in the relationship. And they want to talk it through because they don't like the feelings of that conflict still staying open. And talking through the feelings is very much an extroverted thing. And then getting it settled or having the conflict resolved creates closure. And if we're in opposition with an introverted, thinking, perceiving type, the thinking type is saying, well, no, I'm not worrying about how you're perceiving this. I'm not worrying about, the feelings. I'm worried about the logic. Like I'm rooting this based on logic, reason, and fairness. And I'm also an introvert, so I don't need to talk about it. I can be having all of those reactions internally, not talk about it with you, and I don't need the closure of settling things. I don't need to talk through the conflict. Like they might, on their own, as an introverted, thinking, perceiving type, they might come to a conclusion on their own based on logic and do that internally, and then just not really feel the need to talk about it. And meanwhile, the judging type is in angst and it is super anxious because they want to talk about it. They want to settle it. So a major, major difference here. All right, so let's take a look at some of those different facets that help us better understand these types. The first is our core preference, our core facet. It's basically how we organize the physical environment around us. And this is not just like the, like our rooms or our spaces, but it's also in our planning and scheduling. And so the systematic type really wants order. They love systems. They think in systems ways. So systems thinking is something that the judging type prefers, where they want to create systems to create efficiencies and have plans and schedules, because everything seems to work better for them and make more sense when they do that. And what the systematic person thinks when they see the casual person going about their day is how chaotic it feels and how stressful that can create, or that feel to the systematic person. The casual person, it doesn't feel like chaos. It just feels like life. It's like, hey, I like the novelty of not knowing what's happening. And I'm okay with plans shifting because I don't need to have everything like set in stone. In fact, I don't want it set in stone. That feels really restrictive, and it creates stress for me. The planful and the open-ended is all about leisure time. So this isn't about making plans for work or having to schedule your life because you have children. This is all about social activity and leisure time. So the planful person will also schedule and plan their leisure time, because doing so creates closure and reduces stress. The planful type will look at an empty calendar and think, ooh, how can I fill up this calendar with social activities? I'll have lunch with so-and-so, I'll have dinner plans with so-and-so, I'm going to take the weekend to go away to here. And they create things, they fill up their calendars, and that to them feels comfortable. And it also creates closure so that they don't have days that are unplanned. An unplanned day, even like on a vacation, can be stressful for that planful type. The open-ended type doesn't want that at all. They want that calendar to stay open. They don't even want to look at a calendar, because putting something on the calendar creates stress for the open-ended person, because what they think is, what if something else comes along? What if something better comes along? Then I have to cancel the other event, and I don't want to have to. I just want to make a decision when I feel ready to make a decision, if I ever feel ready to make a decision. And they don't need the closure. They can just like take it as it comes. I think about what a weekend looks like for each of these. A planful person schedules their weekend with social events, but they also schedule it with like to-do lists. Well, we got to do this. And they get up on Saturday morning and they drink their coffee and they make their to-do list for the day, and they take great satisfaction and pleasure in crossing things off of that list. And the open-ended person is just like, they wake up when they wake up, they don't make a list, they take their day, they get a phone call, oh, I'm going to go and do this. It's totally last minute. And that last minute thing is going to be really stressful to the planful person, whereas the plan will be stressful to the open-ended person. All right, early starting and methodical is all about how we manage deadlines. So when you have a work deadline, when you have a school deadline, the early starting person is going to plan it out from the beginning. I know my early starting students right away, because they reach out to me in the first or second week and they ask me like, well, what about this? And how about this? And I'm thinking about this project that's not due for 2 months. And can you help me, figure this part out? And what do you think about this topic? And they want to plan it out in the beginning of the semester so that they can start to approach their tasks and give themselves plenty of time to be done way before the deadline, so that they can go back and review the work and make sure they did it well. The pressure prompted type is not going to do that. They aren't really thinking about it right away, or if they are, it's not to say they wait till the last minute. That's procrastination. Waiting until the last minute to do the whole thing is procrastination. It's not the same thing. Pressure prompted people think about the ideas. They're like letting them sit on the back burner. They're on a low heat, and they're just simmering away. And then when it's time to move forward with the project, they jump in and they do it. And generally it's well done. Like, we're thinking about projects that are well done on both ends. It's about how you got to the point of it being done and following the guidelines and doing it well. So procrastination is not that. It's like you turned it in because you waited till the last minute and you probably didn't do a good job. Pressure prompted does great work. They do it at the end. They get creative and innovative because there's the deadline. Early starting does great work because they planned it out and they approached it one task at a time, and then they took the time to complete it, and then review it. And so neither is the better way here. It's really about how you feel doing it. And so what I want to point out here is that I often do my work from the perspective of being pressure prompted. And for a long time, I thought that was my preference. What I realize is that I'm actually acting out of preference. Like I actually am more early starting, because what I realize is that I feel better having it done early. And I can do great work if I task it out one thing at a time. What I don't do well with, I may be innovative and creative if I do it at the last minute. And that's often, where I've come from previously, is like, I do great work if I do that, but it takes a toll on me. And it takes a toll on everybody around me, because I do get stressed out because it doesn't feel comfortable. And so what I need to do is have the self-awareness to say, I think I'm better off with early starting, and to create systems that help to support early starting. Just in the same way that I'm not always super methodical, but being emergent, we'll talk about those in a second, doesn't feel good to me. And so I need to create systems that help me to be more methodical. All right, the next one was scheduled and spontaneous. And so this is all about daily activity. The scheduled type really loves routine because routine is reliable, and it reduces stress because it's efficient and you can get it done quickly and easily. And that allows for comfort and security. You know what you're doing, you get it done, you can check it off the list, and that feels good. The spontaneous person would hate a job where everything was routine. They would just be like completely bored. And in fact, any sort of feelings of innovation and creativity would be completely stagnated and stifled by that type of environment. So they really love the newness that comes out of a day-to-day that always brings something different to them, and that they have the freedom to choose how they want to go about their day. So a lot of artists are very spontaneous. People who work with the public, it's to be able to do tasks. Like I think about people who are in environments that, like healthcare or human services. There's a lot of spontaneity in that day-to-day that can help them to feel like they are always doing something different, and that feels exciting, and that makes their day-to-day more interesting and easy. The last is the methodical and the emergent. So this is really narrowly focused on how we accomplish the larger tasks based on how we organize or not the smaller tasks. So one example that can help you to really understand this is how we cook dinner, like preparing dinner. If that's your task, 1 day a week, 3 days a week, every night of the week, then the methodical person is thinking about that well in advance. They are thinking about that when they create a grocery list to do the shopping, to get the items, to fulfill a menu that they've planned, and then they go into the day that they have to cook that dinner with that in mind. All right, well, I'm going to be making chicken, so I need to thaw the chicken this morning so that it's ready for dinner. Or if you've ever worked in a kitchen before, like a restaurant kitchen, you may know the term mise en place. And so I always recognize that the closed captioning spells this way wrong. It's a French term, mise en place, meaning essentially like everything in its place. And so to be a methodical person means that, okay, the kitchen is clean, everything is thawed that needs to be thawed, all of my vegetables are out, I'm going to prepare all of my vegetables and get them into bowls so that they're ready to go into the dish when it's time to add them. And they are methodical about the whole process. They may also load the dishwasher or do dishes as they go so that the kitchen stays clean. And then dinner is done and it's on the table when you said it would be on the table, because you started it with the idea of timing in mind. All right, well, this is going to take 20 minutes and this is going to take 30 minutes. And so I'm going to time it this way. So that's the methodical approach. The emergent people right now are listening to that and they're shaking their heads and they're like, hell no, that's not how I make dinner. The emergent is like opening the refrigerator 20 minutes before, like they get hungry and they open the refrigerator and they're like, what's for dinner? What can I make? What could be quick and easy? And if they have a recipe that they're going to follow, they may not even look and see if they have all the ingredients. They're like, oh, that looks good. And they start to make it. And then they realize, oh, you know what? I don't have whatever this ingredient is. Maybe if I do this instead, yeah, that's fine. It'll be, and so dinner just sort of comes together when, it's funny because I actually tend to lean more towards methodical in my preference, but in practicality, because I'm an incredibly busy person and making dinner sometimes is complicated for me. My partner will say, well, what time is dinner going to be on the table? And I just look at him, I'm like, I don't know, like it'll be on the table when it's on the table, because even if I prefer methodical, I am sometimes cooking emergent and pulling it together as I go. And sometimes, you know what, that works for me, but it also creates stress. And so this is the part of our ability to be self-aware. What feels good to us? What is my preference? I think my preference is to be methodical, but sometimes I behave in emergent ways and that feels stressful to me. So that level of self-awareness is going to help you to become, I think, happier as a human being if you can find ways to reduce those stresses. If you find yourself being asked we live in a J world, in our country especially, we live in a J world. And if you are more perceiving and you find yourself working jobs or doing tasks that feel far too judging, or in a relationship that feels like there's far too much expectation for being judging, then maybe finding new roles that allow you to be more perceiving so that you can be more comfortable and less stressed. And I think doing that not only makes us happier as human beings, but it also allows us to be more aware in our relationships, to communicate more effectively with the people in those relationships. And that's what this paper is really all about, is that level of self-awareness and also our ability to analyze our communication and relationships based on these different types, and to think a little bit more clearly about, where we do well, and where we are happy with other people and where we have conflict with other people, and are we able to make changes. So I hope that that's what you've gotten out of this video series and out of the handouts for each of these facet components of the MBTI. And I do encourage you, please ask questions if you have them, and good luck with writing your paper.